Tonight, the U.S. president promises a peaceful transfer of power.
You can't love your country only when you win.
As the president-elect chooses his chief of staff.
The ice baby, we call it the ice baby.
And at issue on what Canadian political parties are taking from the U.S. results. Bracing for a possible surge of migrants before Trump takes office.
How do you feel about Donald Trump becoming president?
I don't care.
From Arizona to Quebec's Roxham Road, the concerns and plans underway. Ottawa's mixed message on TikTok. The company is forced to close, but the app isn't banned.
Mixed signals, definitely. It's confusing.
The advice for Canadian users.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. As world governments, including Canada's, move to get ready for another Donald Trump presidency, the current U.S. president is sending a message to Americans. It is time to bring down the political temperature. In his first address to the nation since Tuesday's election, Joe Biden also promised there would be a peaceful transition of power this time, unlike what happened 4 years ago. Trump has already started assembling his team to move into the West Wing and tonight naming his chief of staff. Katie Simpson walks us through it all.
Following in the footsteps of most presidents before him, Joe Biden accepted his party's defeat, vowing to respect the will of the people.
Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory, and I assured him that I'd direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition.
Biden inviting Donald Trump to the White House as the president-elect starts to assemble his team, announcing Susie Wiles as his chief of staff, the first ever woman to hold the title. She co-managed his re-election campaign and is known for trying to keep Trump disciplined.
Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The ice baby, we call her the ice baby.
Trump is also zeroing in on his priorities. At the top of the agenda, reforming immigration and carrying out mass deportations.
He's going to be stronger and better at securing the border than he was in his first term, which was very strong and effective.
But Trump may face some resistance from Democratic governors. California's Gavin Newsom calling a special strategy session to protect his state's progressive policies.
Well, good morning, everyone.
A similar pledge coming from Illinois.
And I'm here today to remind people that no matter the storm that we face, Illinois will always strive to make you welcome and safe and protected.
Hi, good afternoon.
The White House is, for now, trying to downplay concerns about Trump's proposals.
I'm just not going to get into the next administration, what it is that they're going to do or not do.
And deflecting blame away from Biden for his party's loss. Instead, pointing to trends outside the U.S., lingering anger over the COVID-19 pandemic and the inflation that followed.
It had a political toll on many incumbents if you look at what happened in 2024 globally. And that's part of what you saw.
Incumbents in some G7 countries have gone through similar losses, and it's a trend, Adrienne, that politicians in Canada are paying close attention to.
So, Katie, you've been working the phones, as you do. What more do we know about how Canada is preparing for a new Trump administration?
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held a series of calls today, speaking with the head of NATO to talk about what this could mean for Ukraine and defense spending, speaking with the head of the European Commission about possible Trump tariffs and what this means for trade. I am told by a senior government source that the sense of shock in this moment is not as strong as it was back in 2016. Trump is a known quantity, and it's all now about managing that relationship.
All right, Katie Simpson in Washington. Donald Trump was elected on promises to seal the U.S. border and deport undocumented migrants on an unprecedented scale. But in Arizona, Caroline Bargut saw how making that a reality will take more than words and walls.
This wall, separating some of the United States from Mexico, is supposed to keep migrants out. But as we saw firsthand, it doesn't stop everyone.
Tell me why you come to America. I'm a Canadian. I want to understand.
Not back to you.
We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country.
Donald Trump has threatened to seal the border and deport millions of undocumented immigrants already living in the U.S., a plan supported by many in Arizona.
You're not going to let a random stranger into your home without knowing who they are.
If it's against the law, it's against the law. I don't make the laws. You want to change the laws and change the laws, right? But you can't say illegal and then say, oh, okay.
On Tuesday, Arizonans approved a ballot measure making illegal border crossing a state crime, giving local and municipal police authority to arrest migrants. But some doubt it'll work.
Our police personnel are for safety, and migration is not their forte, so that makes it hard on us.
This former head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement says in 2019, the Trump administration deported 267,000 people, deporting millions expected to cost tens of billions of dollars.
I think one thing that people don't fully understand is that undocumented immigrants who are in this country have a right to see a judge before they go. And while Congress has beefed up the Border Patrol, built infrastructure like walls, we haven't kept up with the courts, and that's created a vulnerability that really just encourages more migration.
And at the border, the election of Trump changes nothing, at least not yet.
How do you feel about Donald Trump becoming president?
I don't care.
Are you worried? He plans to deport a lot of migrants.
No, man.
Reports now the Biden administration is expecting a surge in illegal border crossings in the months before Trump officially takes office.
And Caroline, this ballot measure getting state and local police in Arizona to track down illegal migrants sounds a bit like a Band-Aid at best.
Yeah, and there's some concern that it could lead to racial profiling. And at this point, we don't even know if they'll be able to do it. In Iowa, Oklahoma, and Texas, those states tried to enact similar measures, but federal courts stepped in and halted the state's powers to enforce immigration.
All right, Caroline Bargut in Phoenix. Thank you. Canadian officials are preparing for a possible influx of people crossing illegally from the U.S. Quebec's unofficial crossing at Roxham Road is now closed, and as Sarah Levitt explains, advocates warn that could put desperate people at greater risk.
Déjà, il y a trop d'immigrants.
An emphatic message from Quebec's premier. The province has too many immigrants, warning of a possible influx of asylum seekers to Quebec, like after Donald Trump's first win.
What I want to do is make sure that Mr. Trudeau, the federal government, take this seriously.
Between 2016 and Trump's first year in office, the number of people seeking asylum in Canada doubled from nearly 24,000 to 50,000. Many came illegally through Roxham Road on the border between New York and Quebec, thanks to a loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement between Canada and the United States. That loophole was removed and the unofficial crossing shut down last year. Since Roxham Road closed, the RCMP says more people have been smuggled into the U.S. than into Canada. But it has been preparing for a Trump win and the possibility of increased illegal crossings in this area for months.
More officers on the ground.
Sergeant Charles Poirier says there's a plan in place. The Quebec-New York border spans 110 kilometers and consists mostly of agricultural land and forests.
It's less appealing for people coming into Canada to do it illegally, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to try it.
Montreal's Welcome Collective formed to help refugee claimants who arrived after Trump's first win, many fleeing to avoid deportation. This advocate says the journey can be dangerous, even deadly, but some people are desperate enough to try.
We fear that that number will increase and pose a real danger to human lives, and we could end up with a serious humanitarian disaster on our hands.
Following Trump's last inauguration, the federal government said it welcomed refugees. But this time around, talk has focused on ensuring the security of Canada's border. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Rosie, and at issue, we'll have more about what Trump's second presidency will mean for Canada. Plus, are there any lessons for political parties here? That's in about 20 minutes. Vladimir Putin has joined the list of leaders who've congratulated Donald Trump on his election win, praising him and Trump's promises to bring a speedy end to what Putin calls the crisis in Ukraine. As Briar Stewart explains, that is exactly what Kyiv is worried about.
Russian President Vladimir Putin might not have rushed to publicly congratulate Donald Trump, but did at this Russian think tank forum 2 days after the election. And he even praised how Trump handled himself in July when an assassin's bullet grazed his ear. He acted, in my opinion, in a correct way, courageously, like a man, he said. Trump has often spoken about his good relationship with Putin. They met at least 5 times during Trump's first term, and Putin says he's waiting to hear what he brings to the table now. The desire to restore relations with Russia to help bring the Ukrainian crisis to an end deserves attention at the very least, he said. Trump has said he would end the war quickly, even before his inauguration, but hasn't said how. As Ukraine's president met with EU leaders, Volodymyr Zelensky said it's his country that should dictate when and how it seeks peace.
We need sufficient weapons, not support in talks. Hugs with Putin will not help.
For now, Ukrainian cities remain under attack. At least 2 were injured in a Russian drone strike in Kyiv, while in Zaporizhia, 4 were killed when a Russian glide bomb hit homes and damaged an oncology center. Trump has signaled that he could slow or block arms and ammunition shipments, which is why the Biden administration is ramping them up now before Trump takes office.
We're going to continue to make sure that they have the strongest, everything that they need on the battlefield.
Trump says he hasn't yet spoken with Putin. The Wall Street Journal has reported that Trump's transition team has suggested a peace deal could include Ukraine abandoning its NATO ambitions for 20 years. Joining the alliance is one of Kyiv's main goals. Keeping Ukraine out of it is one of Russia's. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
A massive fire is tearing through Southern California tonight, destroying homes and forcing thousands to evacuate. High winds and humidity keep fueling the flames, which first broke out Wednesday morning just north of Los Angeles. The fire has since exploded in size and ripped through communities. This woman lost everything.
This is like surreal. I mean, I know we live in a fire danger area, but this is not, it came out of nowhere. It was so fast.
About 800 firefighters have been called to tackle the blaze. Officials warn they face a very difficult road ahead.
This is a challenging fire, and it's wind-driven fire. We're still focusing on life safety and structure defense.
Nearly 18 million people are under fire warnings. The cause is under investigation. Back in this country, there's confusion tonight after the federal government ordered TikTok to shut down its Canadian office, citing national security. But it has not banned the app outright. Julia Wong shows us it's left some Canadians wondering whether it's safe to keep using it.
I need some fun and flavor in my life. Coffee with cold foam?
From the comfort of his home, Mark Gaetano makes a living creating content for his 4.5 million TikTok followers.
I would definitely categorize myself as a comedy content creator. I make fun of the mundane.
But Gaetano is not laughing now that Ottawa has ordered TikTok to close its Canadian offices.
I will proceed as normal. However, it does make me quite anxious that this could lead to a full ban in Canada for everyone.
The federal government says activities being conducted at TikTok's Canadian offices would be injurious to national security, but Canadians will still be allowed to use the app.
Our order was with respect to the installation, not the application, which are very different. But as you said, Canadians should be engaging with that platform and any other social media platforms with eyes wide open.
But that is creating uncertainty for some users.
Mixed signals, definitely. It's confusing. It's if you're going to ban TikTok, ban it entirely, or if you're not going to be, if we're still going to be able to use it, then what's the point of sending out this message if we're still able to use it?
This cybersecurity expert says all social media platforms collect user data, but there are bigger concerns with TikTok.
Is the Chinese government able to collect data on Canadians that they could then at some point weaponize?
Shutting down TikTok's corporate presence here could tie Canada's hands, says this expert.
There is, I think, a weakening of the ability to enforce existing Canadian privacy and security law because the company won't have a physical presence in the country anymore.
TikTok said no one was available for an interview, but in a statement, the company says it will challenge this order in court. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
3 people have been charged in connection with the death of One Direction singer Liam Payne. Those charged include an alleged drug dealer and a hotel worker who is accused of supplying Payne with cocaine twice during his stay in Buenos Aires. Payne died after falling from the hotel balcony. Investigators say an autopsy showed the pop star had alcohol and cocaine in his system. Well, parts of Ontario are reporting a dramatic spike in gun violence, with more incidents happening during the day and some turning into outright shootouts. Nicole Williams spoke with a mother whose son was recently targeted, and they talked about the grief she's now forced to endure.
Melanie Ward remembers with haunting clarity the moment she learned her son was dead.
And I just dropped to my knees and screamed. It's something that will always be envisioned in my head. It was shock, it was denial, it was, how is this possible?
Alexander Kirchamaro was on his way to an appointment in Hamilton, Ontario back in March when the 19-year-old was shot and killed in broad daylight.
I lost my son. I lost the teenager. I lost the 19 years of his life, and now I lose his future.
Her family, one of many grappling with a rise in gun violence this year. Hamilton setting a new record for shootings, 58 so far, compared to 35 all of last year.
That is no secret. These are scary numbers. And what we're starting to see is a trending of daytime shootings. And not just daytime shootings, but shootouts between individuals.
Like this one, captured on dash cam in August. One person using another as a human shield. Police say no one was harmed, but the violent trend is extending across the Greater Toronto area, with shootings up 40% in Toronto, 17% in Peel region, and 80% in York region compared to last year. The most recent data from Statistics Canada shows gun violence has been rising right across the country. And this expert says part of the issue stems from looser gun laws in the U.S.
The U.S. has sort of kind of opened the floodgates, and everybody else is sort of getting their crime guns from them.
The Canada Border Services Agency says smugglers are using more sophisticated methods to move guns, and agents are trying to adapt.
But experts warn that people inside Canada are also getting more desperate. And unless that changes, families are going to continue paying the price. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
2024 is expected to be the hottest year on record.
Humanity is torching the planet and paying the price.
Now there are questions. What will happen under Donald Trump's presidency? A new app is connecting the stories with the tombstones of fallen soldiers.
You just basically press scan. There's my grandfather there.
And dozens of monkeys on the lam after escaping a research center.
We've seen one or two even beside the road before, but never heard of this many getting loose.
We're back in 2. Fallen trees and down power lines are now laying on the streets of Havana after Hurricane Rafael tore through western Cuba. At peak, power outages left 10 million people in the dark. Rafael is the second hurricane to bring down the power grid in less than a month after Oscar ravaged the country in October. Well, Europe's top climate scientists say temperatures have reached new heights in 2024. And as Hanomansing explains, some experts fear the crisis could get even worse when Donald Trump returns to the White House.
The European Union's climate service is delivering a stark warning. 2024 will almost certainly be the hottest year on record.
Humanity is torching the planet and paying the price.
This NASA model shows global surface temperatures climbing since the 90s. And a new report predicts this will be the first year that's 1.5 degrees warmer than the pre-industrial average, before human-caused emissions started spiking dramatically.
We're seeing the beginning of the world truly breaching the 1.5 C temperature threshold. And to see the consequences for sea level rise and ice and people and disasters.
A state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago.
For some, the election of Donald Trump is adding to the anxiety. The next US president once called global warming a scam.
It was a ripoff of the United States, and I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money.
That's what he said about the Paris Climate Agreement, a deal centered around staving off the worst impacts of climate change. Trump pulled the US out, Joe Biden rejoined, but Trump has said he will roll back climate measures again.
Having a federal climate legislation is very important. It was quite transformational.
Anand Gopal and his climate policy think tank modeled the potential impact of Trump's second term on US climate action. He says to expect emissions to continue to drop, but significantly slower, with consequences on the environment and the economy.
180 clean energy projects have been started up in the US. That is quite a significant number in just 2 years.
As the world's second largest emitter, uncertainty over US climate action will likely cast a shadow over the UN Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan next week, as countries wonder what path the new administration will take. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, the hunt is on in South Carolina for dozens of escaped monkeys that managed to get out of a medical research facility. 43 of them wandered away when an employee didn't properly shut their enclosure. Officials insist they pose almost no risk to the public, and staff are trying to trap them using food. Escapees from this facility aren't unheard of, but this many monkeys getting out at once has shocked local residents.
We've seen one or two even beside the road before, but never heard of this many getting loose.
Everybody in Yemisi's been talking about it pretty much all day today.
Do not shoot the monkeys, do not try to trap the monkey as a pet. We've seen posts on Facebook already, people wanting to try to take a monkey as a pet. Do not do that. It's a federal crime.
Officials say the monkeys are young, they haven't been used for testing or infected with any disease. Hope they're okay. A new app is helping preserve the memory of fallen Canadian soldiers.
We don't want to lose these individuals and their stories and their sacrifice.
How AI is helping map graves around the world. And Rosie's here with that issue. There's a familiar face.
Hey, Adrienne, back here in Ottawa, and tonight we're going to tackle what Trump's re-election means for Canada.
I look forward to working with President Trump once again.
What's at stake when it comes to tariffs, climate, immigration? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and more.
What we got, Raygun?
That is Australian breakdancer Rachel Gunn, also known as Raygun, and she says she is retiring from the sport. Raygun's unique moves, like the kangaroo hop, gained global attention and backlash at the Paris Olympics. She lost all her battles and failed to score a single point at the Games. Gunn says she now finds competing too difficult, but that she still dances for fun at home. Well, a Canadian-based app is unearthing thousands of stories of fallen soldiers. Anyone can visit their gravesite and learn about the sacrifice they made. As Ashley Burke shows us, now the stories of those lesser known can live on.
I have the letter that my grandmother received telling her that her husband has been killed.
The story of Matthew Chater's grandfather detailed in these records from the Second World War.
He felt the need to stand up against something that wasn't right in his eyes, and he did so. I'm proud of that.
In 1944, Walter Chater was among the troops who stormed the beaches of Normandy into Nazi gunfire. He became a motorcycle dispatch rider and died at 32 after hitting a landmine.
I think we all wish it never happened.
Now his sacrifice is no longer just family folklore passed between generations. It's among more than 300,000 veteran stories preserved in an app for anyone to see.
We don't want to lose these individuals and their stories and their sacrifice.
Veteran Ryan Mullins is a co-founder of the Memory Anchor app. They've used artificial intelligence to map out more than 100 cemeteries around the world.
You just basically press scan.
Users can scan tombstones.
There's my grandfather there.
And pull up the stories of those who fought and died in war. It's a way to put a face and story to names etched in stone.
This is a person that you can look into their eyes. It humanizes them a bit.
What does that mean to you? A lot.
Retired Major Harry Chadwick's great-uncle was a pilot killed in action in Malta during the Second World War.
No member of my family has ever visited his grave. He's never had family visit.
Now with the app, he can see exactly where William Vernon Ratty was laid to rest.
It's comforting, and I think he'll forgive us for not getting there yet, but we will get there.
For Matthew Chater, it's comforting to know his grandfather's story will live on in a new way. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now let's break down the week in politics. Rosie's here with that issue.
At issue tonight, election fallout. Donald Trump is returning to the White House in a historic comeback, and Ottawa is preparing to respond to the unpredictability of his administration. The Liberals say they're ready.
On our side, we've been preparing for this. We're looking forward to doing this work.
We're looking forward to continuing to work together for the prosperity and the security of people on both sides of our shared border.
So what is at stake for Canada with Donald Trump back in office? How will the Team Canada approach respond to threats of tariffs, amongst many other things to consider? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it down. And the Canadian implications of all this tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Brage. Good to see you all on a busy week. I'm sure you've all been up late and following things closely. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. The government says that they have planned for this. They're in some ways prepared for it. I'm not sure they were prepared for the scale of the victory. But what do you make of how this might unfold for Canada and what we should be watching for?
Well, there are some things that are predictable and some things that are unpredictable. It's the old line about known unknowns, et cetera. Obviously, one of the issues will be trade and tariffs and trying to remake the NAFTA if he wants to do that again. A second issue would be NATO and defense spending and the pressure that will come under, but we're under that pressure already. A third item that may be more positive one, at least from my perspective, is we may be able to claw back some of those electric vehicle battery subsidies that we were shelling out to match the ones that Joe Biden put in. If Trump cans those, then maybe some of the pressure will be off on that. But the thing that I think we all have to take into account is things could get really crazy down there in a hurry. It's one thing, Mr. Trump is one thing, but the people around him, some of them, are fanatics. And they believe they have a mandate to remake American society from the ground up. And some of them talk in ways that, and some of the policies they propose that are bound to produce a ferocious backlash in the United States, particularly the plan to deport 12 million undocumented immigrants. The capacity for that to trigger reactions and counter-reactions and counter-reactions, and for things to get really unstable there, I think should not be discounted, and would, at the very least, it has the capacity to send a lot of people flooding north trying to escape the internment camps that the Trump people have planned for them. But more broadly, you know, if you get real unrest and instability in the United States, that's bound to have repercussions in ways that you can plan for, you can project, but you really can't predict in any kind of certain way.
And Althea, that is sort of the challenge for the government right now, is that trade and tariffs and stuff, that, I mean, that may be unpredictable, but the kinds of things Andrew's talking about, who knows?
I think it's all going to be unpredictable. I mean, I was struck by the language. We're looking forward to this work. No, I don't think anybody's looking forward to this work. It's like it's worse than a root canal. It is so unpredictable that it's really hard to plan for, actually. So Andrew lays out a really good case about what immigration repercussions and the asylum claims possibly arriving at the border. I'm not sure it's going to be as bad as perhaps that we fear, and I'm somewhat heartened to see that the government has actually thought about this, because it didn't seem like it thought that much about how to deal with Roxham Road till it was too big a crisis to ignore. On the, like what's at stake, he has said very clearly that he wants to renegotiate CUSMA, the USMCA, the NAFTA 2.0 agreement. That is a huge deal for Canada. It has serious repercussions for the dairy industry. It has serious repercussions for the auto industry. 80% of the cars that we make here, we export to the United States. That's millions of jobs. So I think we're going to see probably more of a rapprochement with the United States, more of a continental approach. You heard Doug Ford talk about this earlier in the week when he talked about, we shouldn't be talking about Team Canada. We need to be talking about Team North America. And that's going to be a challenge for the government. At the same time that in order to kind of take the bullseye away from Canada, we need to harmonize our policies and be more integrated and kind of make that case. You have somebody that a lot of Canadians, most Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians do not want to align themselves with at all. So it's going to be very interesting tightrope exercise for the government.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that in the call that Trudeau and Trump had yesterday, Trump was very interested in the tariffs we had already put on China, because of course that's right in his laneway, and so
no daylight between the two parties. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Chantal, your thoughts?
Yes, and on the campaign trail, Donald Trump also talked about cuts to immigration coming from Canada to kind of validate this approach. But seriously, you can't plan for unpredictability, especially when the U.S. administration is in play. The notion that because you've seen it before, you're okay to do it again, it doesn't hold in this case. Why? Because most of the adults that acted as guardrails the first time around have just spent 3 months telling Americans not to vote for Donald Trump. So they must have seen something that has spooked them, but it also means they're all out of the loop. I think two things. One, the American system's benefit to Canada is that Donald Trump will not be in the White House until January 20th, and I believe the real planning has to happen between now and then. Because you're going to get a much better take of where this is going between now and then. And in the case of the new NAFTA, yes, there is a deadline, but it's 2026. Yeah. And that basically means that there is time to see what is happening where. But that being said, what this election result basically means is that whoever runs Canada after the next federal election, and that election will come sooner than 2026, will see most of his agenda eaten up by with the management of the Canada, U.S. and the global relationships.
Yeah, we should mention one other thing, which is we may be in for quite a challenge on the tax cut front. Mr. Trump has talked about replacing the income tax with tariffs. I doubt that that's going to happen. But you could be sure that he's going to bring in further corporate tax cuts, and this will certainly make for a competitive challenge that can't be ignored. And at a time when we're wrestling with deficits, that's going and more spending on defense, for example, that's going to be hard to finance and hard to match. But we can't just ignore it.
Althea?
I'm not sure that there's no benefit to part of the approach the first time. Like, relationships don't just vanish overnight. And so if, Lighthizer is still around, that's a relationship that this Prime Minister's office has invested a lot. Even the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President-elect, former President, while not always warm, at least not publicly, at least seems cordial. Like, I was struck that Viktor Orban is apparently more important than Canada on the list of world leaders to call back. But I think that there is still value in having some relationships built. The bigger challenge, frankly, is the kind of like everyday official to official relationships. Mr. Trump wants to put basically partisans in the first top 3 levels of the bureaucracy. That means all those relationships that we depend on for like the boring stuff, like the water in the big lakes and the Great Lakes, like things like the stuff that we don't cover in the news but actually needs to get done. That's the stuff that you're going to have to, those relationships will be gone, and those people that you're going to be dealing with will be perhaps radically different in terms of their ideology. Yeah. That's going to be a real challenge for the bureaucracy as well as the politicians.
Last 30 seconds to Chantal.
If only those were the real challenges. I find it a bit thing that people make themselves believe that dealing with Donald Trump after having watched this campaign is going to be anything resembling what happened the first time around in any way, shape, or form. And I believe that most Canadians who followed the campaign, whether they are happy or not with the results, and in the next block we will talk about that, totally understand that the message of the government, stay cool, it's almost business as usual, is, excuse my language, BS.
Okay, well, good way to end it. And you're quite right. In the next block, we'll talk about any lessons or warning signs or things to watch in terms of what happened down there for Canada's political parties. What can they learn from Kamala's defeat and Trump's win?
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
So what are the lessons for politicians in this country? Can they be applied here? More at issue right after this. At issue, the Democrats lose big while Kamala Harris and her campaign are still reviewing their defeat. Her message to supporters: stay strong and keep fighting.
On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win.
So can liberals in this country learn from the Democrats' loss? Should conservatives take heart in a Trump victory? What can all of this tell us about what might happen here and what political parties might learn from that? Chantal, Andrew, and Althea are back. Chantal, what do you think are the biggest takeaways politically for our politicians in terms of what unfolded down there? Because this is a year of a lot of elections and a lot of incumbents losing.
It's going to take a while for that dust to settle. But seriously, if I were the Conservatives and the other parties, I would notice that inflation and cost of living issues trump all, including some fairly offensive language on the campaign trail, which will not be matched to that level in this country in the next campaign. But basically, a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump, by the looks of it, were driven by the cost of living issue, not by his language, not by because race, immigration, you're going to deport people. That's one. For liberals who are thinking about changing leaders as if it's a magic formula, changing leaders late in the game, no magic formula. Even when the leader campaigns, the new leader campaigns rather well, at the end of the day, after that initial bump, and we have seen that in this country with John Turner, with Kim Campbell, it does vanish and you return to fundamentals. And I think those two main lessons will probably stick. And also the fact that what were the numbers in 2024? There have been 10 elections in major countries, and in every single one of them, the incumbent got sent home. Not from the right or the left, that wasn't the point. If you were the incumbent this year, you've just drawn the wrong ticket at that lottery.
I mean, this year, maybe the Liberals, that's why they want to wait till next year. Maybe things will improve.
Oh, yeah, it's going to get a lot better in 6 months. Yes, sure.
But there is a lesson there for them, Andrew, that they seem to be aware of but have not corrected, and that is talking about the economy and just hammering it home the kinds of things that you can do for Canadians. They will tell you they're aware of it, but I don't see signs that there's any actual fix being done, really.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for the Liberals, if I can put it this way, is the voter groups that they would be in danger of losing, that you could read into this result, disaffected rural voters, disaffected young men, people who are upset about the economy, they've already lost them. I mean, they're at 22% in the polls. There's not a lot further they can fall. So those lessons, if they've been learned, or if they were going to be learned, would have been learned already, and we'll see whether they've learned them or whether there's anything they can do about it. I'd be careful, that being said, of not over-reading what went on down there. I want to reinforce Chantal's point that the dust is all still settling. People tend to rush into print after American elections with all kinds of sweeping statements of what went on before the votes have been counted. There's still, by my calculation, 12 million votes to be counted, most of them in California. By the end of this, you're going to find that the sweeping mandate is about 2 percentage points of margin of victory over Harris. So 50 to 48. That's not a particularly sweeping mandate. And again, people will read into that and say, well, the reason the Democrats lost, the reason the Republicans win, is because the voters were either for or against the things that I'm for or against. People tend to invest meaning in these things that conforms with their prior convictions. So just be careful of any of the, including mine, of any readings into this, because they will tend to conform with what people would like parties to be saying and doing anyway.
So Althea, tell me what you think this tells us about what political parties might do here differently or can learn from what happened.
Well, just to go back to Andrew's point, I mean, the Liberals have not just lost men and rural voters, they've also lost women and college. They've lost everybody. So I think there are lessons for the incumbent government. I'm just not really sure what they can do in that short period of time. I think that the major lessons are really medium and message. I think that the center-right wing of the political spectrum has really created their own ecosystem through social media, through the internet and online publications in a way that the left has not done and not invested that time. And they're reaching tens of millions of people incredibly easily. And centrist, center-left parties are still using traditional sources of news who have seen their readership and listenership and viewership decline rapidly. And so the message isn't getting there. The other problem, frankly, is that it may not just be that they don't know how to communicate, is that they're not sure what they're communicating about. Mr. Poilievre has really successfully prosecuted the case that it is the government's fault, Justin Trudeau's fault personally, that the costs have gone up, and it makes it seem like Justin Trudeau can absolutely do something about it and he's choosing not to. So one person's on your side and the other person is not just not on your side, but is actively working against you. That is a really powerful message. And the Liberals are still in that preachy tone, attacking tone, dismissive tone. How do you reach new groups of voters with a message like that? I think there's so many lessons to look inwardly, but it's also about, I think, them struggling with how do they counter that message.
Okay, Chantal.
And there's one thing I've noticed since Tuesday. It's totally anecdotal, but I've run across people. I've been traveling from Ontario to Quebec and back all week. More people than last week are telling me that they are not disappointed with the Trump result, which I read as that there are many people who are telling pollsters they want to vote Conservative, and now they feel that they've been given permission. Why? Because they know that Pierre Poilievre is not like Donald Trump, but if the Americans can go there to get rid of an incumbent, it's a lot easier for them to go to Pierre Poilievre.
You got
and I think the Liberals who are sitting around saying this is great because Canadians are going to be spooked by this and they're going to run to us, some may, but I'm not convinced that that's a really valid strategy.
15 seconds or so, Andrew.
It's not certain that there's a potential upside for the Liberals. If Trump starts really getting obstreperous and beating up on the country, and if the government can be seen to be the ones that says, look, we've got the experience and the willpower to actually stand up to this guy, and Poilievre won't because he's too beholden to his base or because he's too inexperienced, it could cut both ways, but potentially could be to the Liberals' advantage.
Okay, got to leave it there. I wager we'll talk more about this. Thank you all, though. I appreciate your analysis today. And with that, I'll send things back to Adrienne in Toronto.
Thank you, Rosie. Next, the raccoon that took a nosedive in our moment. In New York, authorities are investigating how one lone raccoon got into a terminal at LaGuardia Airport and set off a scene of comic mayhem. But as you'll see, the answer is very simple. Raccoons go wherever they want. Just the latest evidence that those trash pandas seem to be having a moment. So first, there was the dramatic entrance. A bit like a high-wire acrobat, that little intruder swung around, checked things out, and then plunged to the ground. One quick-thinking bystander pieced together all the commotion that resulted. The antics, almost slapstick, as people tried to flee the raccoon or maybe capture it with a garbage can. Spirit Airlines told us the animal was located and released outside. Quote, to ensure a positive experience for our LaGuardia guests, the company said. We immediately notified the facilities team and are addressing the matter with a professional wildlife control company. Well, good luck to them with that. They will need all their expertise to outwit those wily trespassers. Here's the thing about LaGuardia. They just finished, I think, an $8 billion renovation, but they didn't do that terminal. There's a solid chance they're going to have to spend some money right there very soon. From all of us here at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.